Hello and welcome to another one of the SDM Foundation's Tech Talks for MMTV and YouTube. Today what we're going to be talking about is updates. So, what is an update? An update is a new iteration of existing software that you already use in one way or another. Keeping software up to date is crucial to have your devices running smoothly. However, there can also be problems or disruptions when you first update because of the changes made. We will be going over some examples of that with Apple's new Sonoma update to macOS. But first, we're going to go over some of the basic principles to update your devices with minimal issues. Try to check for updates on a regular basis on all your devices, and for both the operating system as well as for individual applications and software. The less frequently you use something, the more likely it is out of date when you go to use it. So checking it before doing anything is likely to save you some hassle. If your computer or device notifies you about an update, there's a chance that you might need to check more frequently, but as long as you heed the advice of the computer and update as soon as possible, then you're on the right track. If your computer is telling you that you need to update still, and has been for months, and now you just accept the update notification as part of the device, then you absolutely need to update. Right now, stop watching this and update. Also, that would mean you need to check more frequently, because if that describes your situation, then you would find out the unfortunate reality of your situation is that now there's not one quick update, but there are a plethora of updates that will make you question if your computer is working properly because of how long it takes to download them all. You may also just happen to be the bane of my existence. Just kidding. A computer that is in this state needs to be left alone to update. Checking in to see if it needs restarts or if there's a prompt on the screen for you to do something so it can continue the process. Also to see if nothing has changed. And if that's the case, consistently for several hours and doesn't seem to be downloading or changing from where it is, if there's a progress bar or something like that, then you would want to shut the whole machine down, holding the power button down to turn it off, turn it back on, and try again. And if it fails to go through once again, then you have a real problem. I could elaborate a lot about what to do if you find yourself with such a problem, but basically it comes down to spending time, effort, and potentially money into getting your computer to a satisfactory state, or deciding that a new computer and transferring your data is a better solution. Now we're going to get a bit more specific and talk about Apple's updates, although some of what I may say might apply to software and devices that are not made by Apple. For operating systems like macOS and iOS, when an update is released, that information is sent out to all Apple devices. For smaller updates, it may be to all devices at once, or something very close to that. With bigger updates, they tend to release the update to large batches of devices, one batch at a time. Unfortunately, Apple's documentation states that they aren't exactly beholden to automatically update your phone, even when you have automatic updates turned on in settings, phone or computer. This may be frustrating, but it is also a reasonable stance for Apple to take. Apple is dealing with customers who want their cake and to eat it too. Finding the balance between updating people's phones or computers for them so they don't encounter problems and the problems people complain about as a result of the updates is a tricky task. Besides sending the larger updates out in batches, another way Apple tries to find balance is putting more power in the hands of the user and less automation of updating. It is up to Apple's discretion to decide what updates will be done automatically, and generally speaking, only minor updates or ones without a major change to how the user interacts with the device are done automatically. Ones that are larger, / make a change to how a common interaction is done are the ones that are sent out in batches. There's also a good chance your phone is aware of it, however, it is not notifying you that there's an update. Meaning if you were to go and check, you would see that there's an update, but you don't have a notification before doing so. Eventually, it would tell you that there's an update to do by having a notification pop up in settings, but you may encounter something is not working properly before you see that notification, which is why going to check for updates is so critical. Over the past month, I've encountered dozens of iPhones that had 2 updates waiting to be installed and no notifications about there being any updates. Everyone is different, so everyone wishes things would work this way or that way depending on their individual preference. Apple has to try and find a system that works for as many people as possible, and currently this is what they've come up with. I could probably outline a few different ways Apple could operate, allowing an extreme jump in ease of use for users. However, each outline would alienate other users, making their ability to use the device exponentially harder or more frustrating. Basically, it's hard to balance what way to go about having updates be done because of the difference in users. You, yourself, the user, are what makes an iPhone or any device useful. It's only capable of doing what you are able to make it do. So understanding this basic principle of technology results in a user getting the most out of their device. Without doing updates, the capability of the device goes down because the user encounters something not working as intended and not knowing how to achieve the same goal another way. A simpler way to look at things is keep your devices up to date or learn enough about computers and technology to feel comfortable amidst the chaos of having essentially infinite ways to go about achieving a task, doing a function, etc. If you want things to just work, then stay up to date. Read what the computer tries to tell you about the new features, and Google your problems when you first run into them. That is your best bet for things to just work as intended, and you will still encounter issues beyond your control, outside of your ability to complain to any sort of authorities about it. If you would like to continue living in modern society with us, you'll have to learn to deal with this. But there's nothing stopping you from going to live in the woods besides all of the positive things that you like about modern technology. Now, let's go over some of the actual updates that were applied to macOS when they updated to Sonoma. That is their most recent iteration of the macOS. And we're going to talk about that and some of the features they've added and how it is noticeably different when you change to it for some, and maybe for others, it's just another day on the computer. The first change is that there's been a change to the login screen and not just the usual change of the screensaver, which is true as well. We have these lovely rolling hills. But the thing that might throw some people off is that the actual place where you sign in or put your password is no longer in the dead center of the screen. It is a bit lower, so it's still in the center horizontally, but vertically it is now lower. And that might not seem like much, but it is enough to throw some people off. The next changes are also minor, but have many potential uses which could make them a major part of how you use your computer. Or, more likely, you will encounter one of the unchanged, or more likely, you will encounter one of the changes unknowingly and be a bit confused about what happened, although things will probably seem normal again shortly. This will make sense in a moment when I show you the actual features, but first I'm going to do some typical interactions and see if there's a difference from doing the same action on the previous operating system. So before we test some typical interactions, let's talk about what happened after I initiated the update to Sonoma. So we waited a long time for the update to go, and I sped that process up for the video. However, once the update was done, there were a few things I had to do when I first signed in with Sonoma. I had to give permission to certain programs, or I had to give certain programs permission to features of the computer. For instance, I'm using Camtasia to record this video, and Camtasia had to ask for permission to capture the screen again, and there were a few other programs that required permission to aspects of the computer. Something that they had before, but because of this update, they needed to be given permission again. And if this is something that you don't do all that often, or you are unaware of how that works, it might totally throw you off. And then something that you're used to doing, unless you gave it permission again, it wouldn't work properly. Also, as if to solidify the fact that this is a good time to make this video, as soon as I went to open Camtasia again, there was an update for Camtasia. So that was probably a result of the update for the Mac operating system. So once I was on the new operating system, Camtasia knew that it had access to that new operating system as well. So it wanted to update so it could add its new features. And this is how the world works today. So a moment ago, I mentioned that you may not notice any of the differences besides, the minor ones I just mentioned, but then you'll probably stumble across a feature unknowingly. And the one that I had in mind when I said that was this. Doesn't seem like much at the moment, but why don't we open up a couple example windows for programs. Look at that. Another permission prompt. Just going to say OK to that. Get a couple of windows open. Alright, great. So now, if I do what I was doing before, which is click on the desktop, well, now that certainly seems like something opposed to not much of anything, doesn't it? So I'm sure you can imagine that there are people who would be very thrown off by what the heck just happened to all the windows, right? But because this is part of the new update, we have this prompt up here that says click wallpaper to show desktop items. Quickly access desktop items and desktop widgets by clicking the wallpaper. Clicking again brings the windows back. And you can change that in system settings. So what that means is that when we click the desktop, it will move all the windows off to the side so you have access to the items on your desktop. And if we go into settings, we can see the other aspects of Apple's new update or some of their recent updates that the features that they've added and how they've added upon those with Sonoma. So I'm going to go down to System Settings, and just like before, we're going to go to Desktop and Dock. And what we're dealing with now is Stage Manager, Widgets, and Windows. So there's been a change to what we have in settings under Desktop and Dock, with some new features to existing things, as well as just new features in general. So let's see what some of the changes are. So Stage Manager is something we'll come back to in a moment, but right now that's something we have off. So widgets are something that you may have encountered on your iPhone or Android if you have a smartphone. If you have a Google search bar on any of your phone home screens, then that is a widget. It's bigger than a typical icon, and it has a bit more functionality than just allowing you to access something, right? You can actually use the search bar to search instead of having to click on it and then it takes you into the Google app to search. That's an example of a widget. And so we get to decide if we want widgets to show up on the desktop or in Stage Manager, if we have that on, as well as if we want iPhone widgets or not. So let's go ahead and hit Edit Widgets. And then we'll drag one onto the screen. And there we go. So as you can see, this menu here is a bit reminiscent of an iPhone menu, but macOS and iOS are getting increasingly more similar in how they have various things laid out. So once again, we have a prompt here. Because this is a new menu for a new feature, they have a little prompt that says what's new. If you don't read these and then you complain, I have a problem with you. Place widgets directly on the desktop. Drag a widget from Notification Center or browse the new gallery, now featuring widgets connected from your iPhone. So if you have the same Apple ID on a Mac, a computer, and an iPhone, you can take widgets you already have on your iPhone and bring that exact same widget onto the computer. And then once again, if we are doing a bunch of things, so we've got several different windows open and we're all over the place, but I want to see what day is it again. Oh yeah, what do I have going on that day? Yes, lots of stuff. You get the idea. We also now have the ability to customize how our windows interact in a few different situations. So when you're opening documents, let's see. If we're going to open a new document when we're already in full screen, it will become a tab. So we have two different tabs here, tab 1 and tab 2. So we have two documents open at the same time. So now if I leave full screen, and then once again open up a new document, now it's its own window instead of an additional tab. And that is because we have preferred tabs when opening documents only in full screen. So it only did it when I was in full screen. But I could change that to always or never. So ask to keep changes when closing documents. So if I go to close one of the tabs, it asks if I want to keep the changes that I made and, save this as untitled too. I'm going to say delete so we don't save that. And then another thing is closing windows when quitting an application. So when this is on, open documents and windows will not be reopened when you reopen an application. Meaning that if I go up and quit Pages right now, it's going to ask me about this window as well, just like it did with the last one. Once again, I'll say delete. And if I were to open up Pages, obviously that window wouldn't open again, not just because of this setting, but because it doesn't exist. So let's try that with this here. So we're going to quit Numbers. It didn't even ask to save that one, maybe because I didn't make any changes. Changes. Okay, so now that we did that with this, let's once again see if we can quit Keynote. It will ask to save that. We'll save that as test. And then open up Keynote again. And it's asking what we want to do. Do we want to open up a new document? Do we want to open up the one we had recently, etc.? Let's go ahead and choose to open up the little test Keynote file I have here. And then let's change that so that maybe now, once we close Keynote and go to reopen it, what we were working on will open up as well. And what do you know? It did. So I'm going to turn that back on, close that. And so mission control is a feature that was already here, but they added some additional aspects to it. And it's a little bit hard to describe without visuals, and the visuals can get a bit overwhelming because it involves having lots of things on the screen at once and trying to make that more manageable. It's also what Stage Manager is for. So you can use both of these two features in conjunction or one or the other to customize how your computer works so that you can maximize productivity by having quick access to everything you need and having unique features that make things you're working on stay ready but easily movable out of the way so you can access other things. So let's get into some examples of that. Alright, so we've got, why did this do that? Whatever. Okay, so we've got some windows open now. And if I hit F3 on the Mac keyboard, it does mission control. If you have a Mac laptop, you can also get to mission control by using the trackpad and swiping 3 fingers up. This may be turned off, but it's a feature that you can turn on in settings. It should be on by default. And if you're unsure of how to make it happen and it's on, then you would want to go to gestures within the settings. And that would show you how to do it. So you would go to mouse and then find trackpad, which we don't have one because this is a Mac Mini. Anyways, if I hit mission control, it spreads out all of the open windows so that I can then choose which one I want to be on top, the one that I'm currently in. It's automatically rearrange spaces based on most recent use. Okay, so we've got 3 web pages in 3 different windows that are clearly different. Right now, the last one we had open is edu GCF. We hit Windows, our mission control, that's on top. But it's going to be on top anyways. I'm not sure what this one does. I'll have to look into that. But grouping windows by application makes complete sense. And displays have separate spaces, meaning that if you use multiple displays like we do, each display is its own unique entity, which then has the different spaces for putting the applications when they're spread out like that, opposed to doing it across all the displays at once. It treats them separate. So let's go turn on Stage Manager. So as you can see here, what it does is arranges your recent windows into a single strip for reduced clutter and quick access. So what exactly does that mean? It means that when we turn it on, we get a helpful prompt, which once again, if you don't read, why are you even watching this video? So with Stage Manager, you can create your ideal workspace and multitask with ease, resize app windows, see multiple overlapping windows in a single view, and quickly switch between apps. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, as you can see, it put all of the windows that I'm not currently using over here on the left. So, showing recent apps in Stage Manager is what puts them over there. And we can decide if we want to see all of the windows from an application at once. Like when we click on Google Chrome, we get all of the windows, right? Or we can turn that off and say one at a time. So, Desktop and Stage Manager. Show items on the desktop. We also want that on in Stage Manager if we want to be able to see our desktop items besides the widgets. So if we have Stage Manager on and we want desktop items to display, we have to turn Show Items on for Stage Manager. And then this is where we turn on or off the feature that hides what we have on the desktop. So it moves the window out of the way, which doesn't seem like as much when you have Stage Manager on. But if we put that as only in Stage Manager and turn Stage Manager off, then if we click on the desktop, it does not do anything. So we can turn it back on, and then once again, it does it. Or if we turn Stage Manager off again, put it back to always, and then click the desktop, what do you know? they go away.
If you have a question about any of these features or any other features on your computer or phone, go ahead and make an appointment and we can go over that. Thanks for watching another Tech Talk video.